Hello, friends, folks. You got the Hempcaster. I hope you all had a great new year. And we are really excited I guess this is the last part in a series of what Vermont and myself are kind of calling the security system for a product that's also valuable, but many people lose it due to spoil and infestation and just so many things that this system brings to the market that I know Vermont's excited, and I surely am. I hope that when you view the other videos, if you have any questions, you reach out to Vermont and me, in which we will give a link to down below the screen. So it makes it easy access, and we can get your questions answered for you. We're really excited about this. Gosh, I'm getting a little bit hoarse. We're really excited about this system. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Vermont Trotter, and I think you'll find him to be a lot more bright and articulate on this matter than me. Hello, Vermont.
Hello, Mark, and you were so kind to give me such credits. I'm not sure I deserve them. Yeah, this is quite the series we have for you guys. It's dealing with post-harvest technologies. As I've watched the hemp market be whipsawed pretty hard over the last couple of years. There's been a lot of damage, a lot of bloodshed. As Mark pointed out, the crop degradation over the course of time it causes a lot of people problems. During transshipment from one warehouse to another, just if it's not properly stored. And you're going to hear, this is a series that we've put together over the last 30 days. We've got 3 different interviews that we're going to be doing, 3 different shows, each one lasting about an hour. And it deals with post-harvest technology and what it can do for the industry as a whole. We've got 3 different people. We've got a guy named Mike Fitzgerald with Forest Concepts, who's got a crumbler technology. We've got Aaron Norris of Norris Thermal Technologies, which is a drying system. And then we've got Tom Nelson of Torisac, which is a long-term storage. And the reason why these 3 go together, the crumbler takes your crop and turns it into a uniform size. The drying technology dries it out in a very short period of time, and then down to about 10% moisture, and then drops into the Torisac at the end of the line. The Torisac is a nitrogen purged, vacuum pack tote bag. Is a really unique piece of technology. And what's kind of fun about this, all 3 of these guys, is that the hemp industry found them. Not one of them had approached, created these technologies directly for the hemp industry, but you guys found them, and it has been a real interesting journey for all 3 of them. The Torisac has got demonstrated 19 months of long-term storage, where the quality of the flour coming out of the bag was just as good as it was going in 18, 19 months before. No idea how long it will last. It's just a real interesting series, and the 3 of these together present a post-harvest process that will bring long-term stability to your crop. And you'll hear me talk about this throughout this series, the value that the long-term storage, safe and secure long-term storage, can bring to any industry. It allows you to create a futures market. And futures market is stability, and stability is something that everybody in this industry needs. It allows everyone to plan. It allows the processors to plan, knowing full well that which they pull out of the bag in June is every bit as good as that which comes into the processing plant in October and November, right after harvest. And Mark, you and I both have done research on the futures market, and specifically the Chicago Mercantile. Talk a little bit about that with us, if you could, please.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. First off, the basis that I have is not sophisticated. I am not a hedge fund manager. I don't have a formal education in the market, but as you say, when I first came into this industry, Vermont, I knew that the farmers in the Midwest, we referenced that, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange starting in around the 1880s, 1890s, somewhere in there. And in the readings that I've done, as you've done, it begin to stabilize the market because it gives an avenue of investment. It gives an avenue that the farmers that were involved in, what was it? It was chicken and no, it was eggs and butter.
Eggs and butter.
Yeah, were the first products that the Chicago Mercantile Exchange put out there. And if you look at and it also was advantageous to the small farmers, my understanding, you know, more information on it for those that would be interested, but all the way around, it gave an avenue of investment and stability to the market to where an exchange means you could invest. And the farmer knows his business pretty well. So he becomes a sophisticate in himself once a market of investment is established. And that's about as simple as I've got as a basis. But then we move to hemp, and hemp is projected to be in the $24 to $25 billion range on a commerce scale here in the next year or so. And even though we've had up and down turns in the valuation, which a exchange market helps stabilize because you can invest in it and money can come back out of it. You know, I advise everybody, you don't go into any kind of exchange or market or investment without being knowledgeable and confident as what the market's going to do. But since we know that it's a besides investment, and by the way, I think you to kind of tie this excitement together that it's real and it is going to happen, whether it happens in the Northwest, wherever a hedge fund or a large investment firm comes into. We believe it's best in the Northwest, don't we, Vermont? We
Absolutely.
We believe the Northwest hemp exchange is going to be a winner here in the Oregon Northwest area because we're at that 45th parallel, superb growing region of the nation, and Oregon is known, if you don't mind me saying, Vermont, as the top grow spot in the whole world. So all that being said, the only way to make this happen, and this is something you've investigated, because whether in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, there was stability because they had good, reliable storage, however they did it. And you and I both know that the key is that you can't have infestation. You can't have a market that there's not a valuable product primarily in one location. And so we are going to help in one way or another. And I, like you, have had an investment firm that I know of, and I know has the money. I'm going to mention New York. They're out of New York. And so it's going to happen, but they're inquiring about what kind of facilities are available and reaching out to our co-ops to ask about storage reliability. So there you go.
So, Mark, I'd like you to touch on one last thing before we move into this series of presentations. You've got some direct experience in the what happens when your crop is not stored, hemp specifically, is not stored correctly. Touch on that a little bit.
Okay. We have talked about this, so I think I'm fairly versed at this. I know exactly what you're inferring. I have been called as a professional witness on the value of crops, both prior in the market conditions, before the farmer took it to the storage house, storage facility, and then the lawsuit in these two cases ensued because of inadequate protection of the crop. As we all know, historically, hemp is stored in a tote bag, and this is a 4x4 open kind of container that you can draw together with the drawstrings. This is, to me, and once again, we've talked about this too, Vermont, it's really the alley-oop way of storage. It does not work. It's not effective for a transportation. It does open your hemp to, as I say, mold, mildew, mites, anything that may be into the storage building. And that's if you get it out of the field in the proper manner and everything is optimum. So it's known to everybody listening to this video right now that we're not trying to uh, invent a problem and then devise a cure. The problem is already out there, and the cure is a system that I believe that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. So yes, I really think the worst condition that a farmer can get into, no matter what the financial situation in the market is not to go to court and not to involve attorneys.
Amen to that. And with that, I think we should lead into our next presentation.
Let's do it.
And I hope you guys enjoy it. It's a really great series, and come back for all three. Hello, thank you so much for joining us today on Hempcast News. This is the first of a three-part series that we have here on how to process your hemp post-harvest. As everybody knows by this point in their lives, if they're even if they're new to the hemp business, growing your crop is only half of the issue. What you do with it when you bring it in out of the field is equally as important to how it is that you go about growing it. And this is a three-part series that we have on that very subject. Today we have joining with us is Mike Perry of Forest Concepts. We bring him on first because he has what we believe is the first step in post-harvest processing of your crop. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mike Perry. And Mike, tell us a little bit about who you are, Forest Concepts, and that sort of thing.
Hi, Vermont. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Forest Concepts. Since 1998, Forest Concepts has been addressing the critical issues of the new bioeconomy, including the new hemp industry. And we're trying to find ways to address those issues to make those industries more sustainable long term. And the start of the company was with Jim Dooley. Dr. Jim Dooley has a master's in ag engineering and a PhD in forest engineering, and he ran plant biotech at Weyerhaeuser for 18 years. So everything we do is based on biology, plant biology, and then turns into engineering on how we address those issues and make it the most efficient and the most economical.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you got into hemp specifically, because it's a brand new industry and people sort of, seem to sort of fall into it. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved.
Well, we got involved in hemp because it's one of those materials that, number one, nobody has really addressed how to harvest it very well. And number two, nobody's really looked at how do you take the hemp out of the field and prepare it for conversion into high value products. Up to now, all they've done is they brought it out, they dried it, and they dried the heck out of it, to be honest with you. A lot of it's parched, and you lose the volatiles to make all those CBD oils and high value products. So what we did is we developed a crumbler. And when we were developing the crumbler, what's a crumbler? A crumbler is like a paper shredder on steroids. You put material in it, and it compresses it and then shears it into small particles. And the higher the moisture, the less energy it takes to do that. And by taking high moisture, we can take the hemp right out of the field, process it through our crumbler, put it into small particles. And I believe you've talked to Aaron Norris over time, but we've worked with Norris Thermal and developed actually a downdraft dryer to dry smaller particles. And what that means is small particles, if you have updraft like all the normal dryers, it blows it out through the stack. Those particles, you lose them. Downdraft, it holds it on the belt, takes half the residence time, half the energy to dry it. So what do? You have less energy to crumble the product, less energy to dry the product, and then you store it or process it. The economics fall into place, the sustainability falls into place, and you can do it quickly.
So tell us a little bit about the crumbler. What is it that makes that cutting technology unique unto you? I mean, I'm familiar with it a little bit. I've got a background in cannabis. I am familiar with, as I tell people, this crop will, things that need to be done have been done in many industries. And when you say, okay, I need to do this, and the answer is, well, okay, if that's what you need to do, then you just do whatever. And then they come to understand that you start applying those concepts, those standard concepts that everybody else uses to hemp. And well, my comment is always it'll bring you to your knees in tears because it doesn't work the way that you think it's going to. So tell us a little bit about how it actually works. And yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you have to look at the plant biology. All plants have fibrous tissues. And if you take those fibrous tissues and just beat the crap out of them like in a hammer mill, you're going to, number one, you're going to have a dry material. Hammer mills require 10% moisture content or less. And if you beat them up, what do you get? You get a lot of fine materials, you get a lot of really dry materials, a lot of dust, and you have a lot of problems. If you can process it high moisture through a crumbler, what the crumbler does, it shears across those fiber bundles. When you shear the fiber bundles, you get small particles. When you get uniform small particles, number one, they're flowable, easy to dry, easy to store. Boom. The economics, the sustainability start to fall into place. All we had to do, and it took us a while, we had to come, our pilot scale units were up to 2 green tons an hour. But we knew the hemp industry harvests in like a 3 to 4 week period. They need to move it quickly. So we have upgraded and we developed a P24 series, which is actually up to 5 to 10 green tons an hour, which you can facilitate that into one of Norris Thermal's downdraft Beltomatic dryers. You have a system, and then you tie it into the newly developed Torus sacks, which the material can go into the Torus sacks with nitrogen, and you can store it for a couple of years before you process it. So you're not going to lose any harvest. They've been losing harvest like crazy just because they can't process it quick enough, they can't dry it properly, and they can't store it properly. We have the answers to all three of those to make it sustainable.
Well, I know that Mark has some experience with seeing the aftermath of things that have not been stored properly. And I come from tobacco country. When I was a kid growing up, I was playing in tobacco barns, and I know that that doesn't work. I mean, you're just hanging it in a from the rafters just doesn't work. One of the things I found interesting about your crumbler technology is it is a rotary shear is what it looks like. So you've got almost a rotor and a stator, and there you have several blades that are chopping in. It's almost like you have several circular saw blades that are cutting in between these very close stators. And tell us a little bit more about how it actually works.
Okay, number one, they're not really cutters. The particle size we end up is determined by the width of those cutters that we use. They're shears, and it doesn't cut on the middle of it. It comes down and shears along the edges. So you have two cutters coming together, and the particles are between them. It shears those particles, and actually, what it does, it compresses them. Then the edges of it shear the particles, and so you end up with a popcorn effect. If you can imagine that, you get a piece that's compressed, sheared, boom, it pops open. So what's nice about that is when it goes into a slurry or whatever you need to for the conversion process, the absorption of chemicals and materials is way quicker than if you had a big particle. So it's a whole series. There may be, it depends on the width of the cutters. We could go down to 1 millimeter or we can go up to 10 millimeters, depending on what the conversion process is optimized for. And the nice thing about taking high moisture through these is number one, we're not going to create fines. You're going to have less than 1% fines as opposed to a hammer mill where you're going to end up with 20 to 30% fines by hammer milling the dry stuff. We're the only other type of technologies that can really handle this and provide economics to the industry. And we have 14 patents, 2 around the processes of shearing and 12 around the particles themselves, the uniformity of the particles. So it's a novel, very novel approach, and it can make a world of difference.
Well, I certainly can appreciate how the smaller size of your particle, you're going to dry a lot faster. That's to me very obvious. So One of the stories we talked about earlier, one of the stories I'd love you if you could share with us is how you actually you've actually run fairly fresh hemp through your crumbler. Is that correct?
Oh, we've run a lot of hemp. We run cannabis through it. Uh, it's really agnostic to what herbaceous material goes through it. Hemp processes really nicely, actually, because it's kind of stalky and it's fibrousy. And actually, if you run just the flowers through, they come out beautiful. So it doesn't matter what the material is, as long as it goes through and the fiber bundles are cut across the bundles, you're going to end up with uniform particles that are going to process very well in your conversion process, or you're going to store nicely.
And it will flow all throughout the system that we're talking about. And am I remembering this correctly that you guys have sort of a truck mounted crumbler and tying into the Norris Technologies drying system? Am I
We
remembering that correctly?
we've talked about doing that. A Norris, the Beltomatic 123B, which we actually have one in our warehouse we use for toll processing hemp. We actually could mount that along with a crumbler, along with a screen on a flatbed, and make it mobile to take it anywhere.
That's
And
real
we,
interesting.
yeah,
Go ahead.
and we really believe in the Norris thermal Beltomatics with the downdraft dryer. We have proven that the residence time is less than half, the energy is less than half, there's more airflow, less heat. And if you combine that with the energy savings of the crumbler, the farmer is going to end up with a lot more money to spend.
So tell us more about your toll services. I didn't realize that. That's not something that's news to me right here, right now. I'm like about 35 seconds old since I've learned that.
Well, a lot. We've done a little bit of hemp, not a lot of hemp, but we've done a lot of corn stover. We've actually done corn stover for Poet in the Midwest, who has 34 plants making ethanol, the largest ethanol producer in the country. But we've done switchgrass, miscanthus, uh, oh my God, the big grasses. We can do anything. It doesn't. We're agnostic to it. Hemp runs really well through it, and the nice thing about hemp is when it's right out of the field, it really is not that high. It's about 40 to 45% moisture content typically at harvest, which processes beautifully through it. And if you process it through two of our heads, it comes out. If you look at the PowerPoint, you'll see the transition where it goes from the raw material to a first pass to a second pass to a screen, and you just pick which one you want, and there's your process to get to it.
Indeed, indeed. So you made mention so you can process flour separately from stalks, and you get the same sort of product. The same sort of mix,
Oh,
same sort of
absolutely,
crumble.
absolutely.
I mean, I've seen pictures of your plywood that you've done for a biochar plant before, and those are the prettiest little crumbles I've ever seen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, it doesn't, we don't, the machine doesn't care what goes through it. It's designed for whatever size cutters you put in there. You're going to get the material out the bottom, and hemp runs really well. If you look at the hemp video I put in, hemp, the long stalks were a big part of it. And those stalks go in and they were coming out 6 millimeter particles onto the conveyor belt. Uh, and there was no drying involved. The material, we had a bale that was fairly dry. It was probably 25% moisture content, which we're agnostic to that too. We don't care what moisture content. It's just the higher the moisture, the less energy we use.
Got it. Well, that's just, Mike, I've got to tell you, when I first stumbled across your crumbler technology, I was immediately taken with it. I just thought it was a very unique take on a solution to a problem across, as you say, a wide variety of industries. And I think you've got just a tremendous, first step in a three-step process of bringing in your harvest. As we made mention at the beginning, just because you grow it, that's just the beginning of your what you got to do. Mark, I'd like to pick you right there when you're trying to take a little sip of your tea. I'd like to get you involved. Talk tell us a little bit about what you're seeing.
Yeah, appreciate the format, gentlemen. Well, Hempcaster, I don't know how many Hempcasts that maybe Mike has been involved in, but there is competing technology out there similar to Mike's, but I'm really intrigued by, we moved into flower, Mike. The industry and biomass has dropped off about 80% here in the Oregon, at least Southern Oregon region that I know of. And we do have some background using shearborn headers on trying to get the flower out of the field. We all know with this inflationary spiral, labor is becoming a very important factor in the farmer's bottom line. So it sounds like you have a method that handles the hemp product wet, and this would be, of course, whether it's for industrial use, such as the herd and for animal bedding and as such. And then also you have a very good treatment for the fragile flower that here in Southern Oregon. Just had another hemp cast where I had a panel from Israel and in different areas, and they come here because of the quality of the flower that we grow. And so it's important to our farmers to know that that the treatment process, or the processing process, I'm sorry, is handling their flower in a way that doesn't deplete the CBD within it. And it sounds like you have some background in this. It's pretty extensive, and I take it you've been doing it for at least a couple of years and maybe have some testimony as to just how really appreciate that you talked about the depletion of the CBD and what you're doing with flowers. So could you speak to that and why you feel like your machine and I learned about the Torosac process. I love that process. I love the thermal technology process, and I guess I know you're part of this dynamic, and I'm really excited to hear what you're doing to treat the flower in the most delicate way possible.
Well, it depends on what you want out of the flower. I mean, we start with what you need to get, and we can design the process through the crumbler to make sure you get those particle sizes. So it's like if you need a 6 millimeter particle to turn it into, we did, to give you an idea, we did some work with cannabis with a company locally, and they wanted to take the flowers of the cannabis and turn it into something that could be rolled into cigarettes. So they wanted small particles that could be used to roll in cigarettes. So we developed a 10 millimeter cutter, and we got 10 millimeter long particles. We can control the length of them as well. And 10 millimeter particles, we didn't process a lot. I think it was one super sack for them. And actually, it was frozen.
Mm-hmm.
But we processed the frozen material into 10 millimeter particles for them, and they just fell in love with it. So it depends on the end product you want to come out with, what you need for your process, and the crumbler can be fixed to make whatever you need. And depending on how you're going to harvest, how many acres you're going to harvest today, you may need the M24 series, maybe two of those in two lines to give you redundancy too. Because let's face it, when you in harvest time, you can't stop. You got to take care of the material then, or you're going to lose harvest. Or you may need two big P24 systems to process 20 tons an hour. So it depends, but those lines can be set up, and they can be set up with the cutters that you need to end up with the product you need to either go right into the conversion process or go right into super sacks.
Yeah, let me just extend on that because I don't think I quite got the question answered and answered on this. Do you have a baseline, Mike, on the CBD content coming into the process and what the testing proves out at the other end of the process?
No, we don't. We don't have any data on. We don't measure that to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't. We don't have extensive data on hemp. On a lot of other stuff like biochar and a lot of other material where we've had access to more material, we have a lab, and we can do all sorts of testing in our lab, and we do a particle size distribution, moisture content, ash content. We can do a lot of that stuff, but we just haven't had the volume in hand. It's because part of it is because the harvest period is so short, and people are trying to take care of that material so quick. So if we do get material, it's material that's been baled or stored, it's dry, and it's kind of excess stuff that they didn't get a chance to process. We'd love to get our hands on some green stuff, and that's why the cannabis guys came through with the frozen stuff for us. Uh, we proved that we could handle that really easily. And I know we could. And the nice thing about processing at high moisture, as opposed to drying it first, is you're not going to parch it. You're going to control and maintain those volatiles in the system so that when you do get to the downdraft dryer, you can really control that drying by the amount of airflow through and the less heat through to make sure you preserve it, get the maximum amount of yield. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. And there's a dynamic that's shifting here that the farm community has got to recognize, in my estimation. And remember, really all I am is a big ear to the ground and try to help the farmers with their ROI by knowledge. And one of the dynamics that I see that's really, I call it a negative, but it's a real issue, and that is that you can complain all you want about the depletion of your product, but many people are losing it and trimming and the storage, kind of moving into something else. But some people want to so much handle and increase and optimize their CBD content. They dry hang. We've got a few boutique farmers, and by all means, I encourage people to do what they do best. But my horror story is that, as Vermont knows, I've been called to court a couple times as a professional witness, and that's not good. Meaning one farmer is in litigation with either a processor or storage about depletion, mold being invited in the product, and the money issue and what they got out of it is a whole other issue. So the reason from the outset that the co-ops have been interested in this dynamic is, number one, I believe that it will help litigate the most painful dynamic of our industry where everybody loses, and that is in lawsuits. Storage is so important, so I'm so intrigued to want to back the Torres Act method. I love the fact, Mike, that you're looking at the issues, and the issues meaning a way to size it for the customer's request or that demand, and that you're moving in a direction that recognizes that the harvest season is very short. And I really hope our farm community recognizes that we have microclimates that can happen anytime, but they really come up in September and October. And so I'm so interested in learning more and being able to support the industry that you're in with processing and doing it. I'm particularly interested, I'm not going to have time to talk about the frozen product that arrived, because we do have what we look at as new technology just coming into our valley. I guess Gallo Wines brought it in through a vendor, and it can be processed wet. I don't know if they freeze it. I'll learn more when we do a Hempcast on it as the refractory. Like I said, I shouldn't say anything because I don't know that much about it, except that it's wet, and I assume they dry ice or they freeze it. It preserves CBD real well, and they've had some marketing studies done. So we hope we can tie this all in and help each other.
And I'd like to jump in here is, the frozen material. I have a little experience with that as well. It's, in my opinion, the only, especially with your high value flour, it's the only way to handle it and process it, because it flows so much better when it's frozen. I mean, you're absolutely right, Mike. It just flows through the machinery beautiful when it's frozen. And my experience has been keep it frozen and all the way through the process as best you can. And one of the things I also would like to touch on, and this is something people will hear me saying throughout this series, is that what this industry needs more than anything else, in my opinion, is a futures market. Because a futures market brings stability. It brings stability to the processor, it brings stability to the farmer, it brings stability to everyone along the supply chain, because now you know that you're going to have something you can plan on. And in order to have a futures market, you've got to have the two things you got to have: is safe and secure storage. And what you've got here, Mike, is the very beginning of a process that leads to safe and secure storage. You mentioned the Torres Act. That's something we'll be touching in on later on in this series. But it's, what you've got is the first step. I think the process, you've got it nailed, is to crumble it down to a standard size, then dry it, then throw it into the Torres Act, and it will store for who knows how long. I mean, 18 months, 36 months, we don't know. But this provides stability to the crop. And so now you can plan. Now the farmer can plan, the processor can plan. everybody can plan. And this is something that I think is really critical for the industry, is that, just because you grow a great crop doesn't mean a thing unless it is cured correctly and stored correctly. And I think you've got, the first part of a really great system that you guys have put together. And I'm really thankful that we have the opportunity to chat you up about it.
Well, thank you. I think you really get it. We've been fortunate by addressing the new bioeconomy, all the facets of it. In the hemp industry, brought it to mind first on the need to do exactly what you said. And in the other industries in the bioeconomy, the ethanol people, they're just getting it. And they've been in business for a long time. They're finding out they've been trying to store bales in barns to dry them out. And yet when they run them through their systems, they never dry out. They always have a big solid gelatin mass in the center. And guess what that does? Their downtime on their plants is about 70% or 30% because of plugs. So they haven't,
Yeah.
they're just, that's why Poet came to us about the corn. But we see it with the hemp industry, especially because it's like corn. It's that harvest window so small that if you don't take care of the material right away, you're going to lose 40% of your harvest. You're going to lose a lot of money. If you can take care of it immediately, as you harvest, process it, store it, or convert it, one or the other, you're going to make more money. It's going to become sustainable because you're taking care of the entire crop all the way through the process.
And then sitting back on a bunch of bags that are they're not going anywhere.
Exactly.
And that's got to be a good feeling. Now, I want to come back and touch upon your where are you located, because this is you've got the toll process. You mentioned also the potentiality and possibility of being truck mounted and being able to dispatch to farms. It's one thing if you're in Virginia and we're talking to everybody over in Oregon and Northern California. Where are you located?
North of Oregon. We're in the state of Washington. We're 15 minutes from SeaTac, but we're close to Oregon. We spend a lot of time in Oregon because those folks down there, you guys in the hemp industry are way ahead of anybody else as far as technology, what you're trying to do. You're very future thinking as to what you need to do to make this industry sustainable, and we're all for that. I mean, that's our whole mantra is how can we help the industry? Everybody was looking at the conversion processes, regardless what industry it was, how I can get the most out of so much material. But nobody was thinking about how do I take care of the material to get it to that point where I can maximize all that material and not lose it. And so we think and what you guys are talking about, and with Norris Thermal and with Tom Nelson and Torasac, we think there's a method here that once applied is going to prove out economically. And once we get one application, one person that shows that, they're either going to have to either raise their prices or be able to reduce their prices because they got more material to sell. It's going to be, the economics going to be different.
It will end up being the prime material that's sitting in a warehouse, and you're going to see, oh, okay, this has been processed out with that system. That's what I want, and that's going to end up being the higher value.
Absolutely.
And as far as Oregon being top of the line in the hemp industry, I think a lot of that has to do with the Mike there with the Mark with the Hempcaster. I think he's got a lot to do with that, because that's what he's focusing on, is bringing this kind of information to the farmers, to the industry, so that they understand that there are solutions to these problems out there, but don't want to have Mark running in and being a professional witness, and as people are pointing fingers at, you didn't store my material well, or it's in a bad, it's in a warehouse that's been, infested with DDT, and now that's leaked over into. I mean, you just don't want to deal with that. And it's a new industry, and this is everybody's tooling up, and coming out of this serious downturn where from the big gold rush that everybody tried to press on. And I think the timing on everything that these systems are coming together are right on the money, and it really is stability, which is something that I think that the industry is looking for, and I think that this system can help provide without a doubt.
Well, we do too, and we appreciate Mark and everything he's trying to do with the Hempcaster and Hemp News. Uh, and we think Oregon's ahead of the mark on this whole thing, as opposed to a lot of Tennessee and a lot of the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic states that are trying to do this. We think Oregon's on the right track, and we think the future is bright. It's just, it's like anything else. It's those first steps getting through and getting it right.
Getting it right, indeed. And this applies not just to CBD flower. This is going to apply to paper manufacturing. It's going to apply to fabrics, because you can't have mold and mildew in your feedstock as you're building food grade paper, or forget just the CBDs, but even into the industrial markets. About the only thing where it doesn't matter if you have mold and mildew inside of your crop, inside of your bale, as if it's being sent through a biochar facility, or perhaps being turned into hempcrete. That's about the only place I can think of that. But even in hempcrete, if you're using it as a building material, you don't want to be building with something that's got mold inside of it. It's just that's bad idea.
Absolutely.
So this process of bringing it out of the field and getting it cured correctly and stored correctly is, it really is, that I see anyway, is very important to the entire industry.
Well, and just a side note here, we've been thinking along the lines of how else can we help the hemp industry? If a cooperative had a crumbler, they could take cuttings at the end of the year. If there were grapevines, anything around where they have to trim, number one, they can't burn that anymore. The EPA won't let them. But what if you could run that stuff through a crumbler and char it, biochar it, and spread on those fields to absorb moisture and stuff for the hemp industry? You could create your own biochar to put on your own place. Why you got the equipment sitting there?
Or send it into a composting system. You're right.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it facilitates a lot of things to think about as far as sustainability.
If I could chime in on that, yeah, we have a couple of large farmers closer up to you, Mike, up in the Hermiston area that use this product many times, depending on what pricing is at on biomass. And of course, they sometimes for the rhizomes or all the benefit of the soil, they just plow it right back under. So, we really are talking about, and I hope I can express it eloquently enough, we really are talking about, we won't call it reinventing the wheel, but for this industry, that after the farmer grows a fine product, he really does have to look at protection. And you can say the prices are down, but if you lose it all, and we have a lot of stubborn farmers that kind of want to do it their way. So I really think it's important. The message I'd like to get out is that we need an infomercial, because really it sounds like a beautiful idea. It is a system, and we're addressing so many important things, from the processing to the bagging and even the trucking. I don't know how many trucks you guys have loaded, but the tote bag system is, had some accidents. It's hard to bind. And I don't know all there is to know right now about the Torsac system, what Tom has to offer. But boy, would it be, this is such a, once again, a beautiful idea and a concept. Would love to see some detail of some things operating when we do 15 seconds on the processing, the drying, and then the bagging of the system, and then show it loaded on a truck. To really get a wonderful message out there, we're going to have to be able to see it. If that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you think about the Torsac, the thing that really sold me on it, it's a micro version of how they do apples in up in the state of Washington. They build those big buildings, put apples in, fill them full of nitrogen, so they can ship all year long. So what you're doing is the same thing on a micro version to preserve the hemp, so you can process all year long.
Wow.
And it makes sense.
Stability.
Exactly.
Process all year long. You know that when you unzip a bag in July, it's going to be just as good as the bag that you brought in October.
Yeah, I think Tom Nelson, he told me, I think the last time I talked to him, he had hemp stored for 18 months in a sack that they opened up, and it was just like the first day it went in. So I believe in what they're trying to do.
On that, Vermont.
And the crumbler that you've got makes it very easy to go in and out of that sack.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen,
Yes, Mark.
yeah, Vermont, we did a Hempcaster some time ago this past summer, and you actually stated exactly what Mike said. That because a little bit earlier in the Hempcast, you said that you didn't really know. You used the words, we don't know how long it will last, but and you said 18 to 36 months. But are we correct there? As Mike alluded to, it's almost in same condition that it went into the bag after 18 months. Isn't that what you heard also, Vermont?
Absolutely. And the thing that, when you and I, Mark, first talked about the Taurus Act, this was before we had put everybody together with Mike and with Aaron on the crumbler and the dryer. But the three together just makes everything flow. One of the issues that Tom had throwing flour inside of the Taurus Act is that everything was sticky and it just held together in this big clump. And so in order to get it out, you had to cut it out. But if you're crumbling it going in, it's going to flow like sand. The material is going to flow like sand into that bag, and it's going to flow like sand coming out of that bag. And that's what makes it, this entire system. Since we first talked back early midsummer, this has all been sort of pulled together. And
let me add one more. I think it just come to me, Mike. A large, I think they're large. I haven't vetted them totally. Corporation has come to our co-op, and they are particularly interested in the smokeless tobacco field and endeavor. And consequently, again, Vermont, I think we had a conversation with Tom and the Taurus Act on the sizing. And I think at that point, he was just in negotiations or talking with Mike about coming into the whole concept here. And we were talking about that 2 to 4 millimeter oregano size that is ideal for some of the market. This is exactly what the investors, for the smokeless people, the hemp chew, I don't think they'll mind me referencing that name, has asked me about what type of facilities do we have. We're not a fulfillment center, so we do not get into processing. So this is really maybe nice to have them come in stronger and support our farmers here in Southern Oregon. They have intimated that they want to invest in or support our farmers, knowing that the Southern Oregon region is the world's top flower growing community, bar none, and I'll stand behind that. So anyway, I'll be excited to learn more, Mike, and to prosper this idea the best that the Hempcaster and our affiliates can do, and let's get this thing rolling.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'll throw this out to you. If you have some farmers or cooperatives that would like to see what a crumbler could do, they could contact us. We could have them ship us a sample of their material. We'll run it and ship it back to them.
Okay.
And we'll look at what the future could be.
Wow, that sounds very gracious. I'll start working on that, see if I can't find a select farmers. It's got to be a win-win because once again, we know that the whole process is protection. I really like what Vermont and me actually, when we first spoke, we talked about the futures market. A couple of our board members have a very good name. That's the Hemp Mercantile Exchange, and we just don't have the sophistication. And it wasn't until Vermont came in to help us recognize that you need some kind of proper storage and volume that is secure to have any type of cooperative-based futures market. So, and we share that. I'm sure Vermont feels the same way. Not so much for an individual entity, but to help the market overall, because it is a stabilizing factor. All you got to do is look into the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I know that sounds lofty, but we've got to have that for our industry. We're a $25 billion industry here shortly, within a couple of years. So we need to get behind this. Let me just add one other thing. I just recently have been asked to help the OIHFA, which is the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association. They do wonderful work in the legal aspects of our local or statewide OLCC and some of the restrictive legislation that's coming down the pipe right now. Ms. Moran with the OIHFA is really battling for us because, guys, in Oregon, since it's just we're renowned, once again, I'll repeat that, for growing the best hemp raw stock of biomass and flour in the world, we're being threatened. And so the OLCC is considering, I just briefly read the bill as of yesterday, taking over our industry. In other words, not honoring the Delta 9 and saying it's ours. And if that happens, it's going to reduce our farmers even more so. I realize you guys are from out of state, but any kind of support letters or I can forward you the legislation. I know it's probably not in your wheelhouse, but we need to protect the state of Oregon. We are on the leading edge, as Mike just inferred, and we are. And so we'd like your support, if you don't mind, kind of taking a plug here for the old IHFA. We'd like to show you what they're doing so you can help us stay alive here in Oregon.
Just send me some information. Let me know what you need.
Okay, thank
I will
you.
definitely support you. And I wish we could bottle Vermont's enthusiasm for this industry. I've been in the business a long time. I actually started in medical business, but I've been in this business for about 16 years, and Vermont is so enthusiastic about this, and rightly so. I think there's a real sunshine at the end of the tunnel here that we're gonna, if with people like Vermont leading it, and with you, Mark, I think we're gonna get there.
Yeah, let me just say, Mike, Vermont knows a little bit more, and maybe my mind is analyzing right now a whole system, but I think Vermont hit it on the head. I don't want to be in court as a professional witness as to why a disaster happened. I am very enthusiastic about this whole process and the team getting together and helping our industry preserve their product. So I'm on board.
We're behind you too,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for this opportunity.
Well, guys, we're about 45, 50 minutes into this. We've got two other presentations behind this. Mike, it's been really wonderful to chat you up. Mark, thank you so much for hosting us. I'll let you start the closeout. I want to start it, and that is, you guys are going to hear me say this throughout this series of presentations. What this industry needs is a futures market, and a futures market only happens when there is safe and secure storage of whatever your crop is. If I did a study of the history of the Chicago mercantile, it started with eggs and butter. And when they got safe and secure storage for eggs and butter, suddenly you had eggs and butter all year round coming into the city of Chicago. It brings stability. Everybody knows that what you pull out of storage is exactly what you put into storage. And how you handle your crop coming out of the field determines what it's going to be when it is 8-9 months down the road and somebody finally gets around to opening your bag and processing it out for whatever, be it for fiber or be it for CBDs. It doesn't matter. And by getting the safe and secure storage, you've got a futures market, and everybody can plan. The processor gets to plan, the fiber guy gets to plan, the farmer gets to plan. And that's critical for this industry moving forward, in my opinion. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark. If you got anything you'd like to share with us.
Yes, thank you again. Just so excited to be involved in this process. I do believe in it. Once again, yes, Vermont, you've got a good, strong voice, and you might sound more enthusiastic, but I want to let the viewers know and let Mike know that this is a superior process. We are going to produce that little QVC-like commercial eventually. I hope to be a part of that. And by the way, Mike, we've got some pretty good videographers that I've retained, and so if I can help you be a part of, we'll travel, we'll do what we need to expose this in the most professional way and let our viewers see what a wonderful plan that we put together. Can't echo enough about we can talk about it as far as the future market goes. I know it's a little bit of a sidebar as to the topic, but I just really support that. I think the main thing that Vermont's getting across here is that with the bagging, the storage system, you can add valuation. Anything that you're going to invest in has to be established in an overall value. And if you don't have storage, how would we get there? So I just really appreciate I'm going to say the Hempcaster, but any type of podcast. It doesn't matter which one. It could be the Hempcaster or somebody else helping support our farm community. And we all know it is the farmers that's a hierarchy of this industry. And it's programs like this that tell them we're out there to protect them and show them some options that will serve their bottom line. So I thank you, gentlemen, for participating.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Mike, I will let you close off. It's about the crumbler and forest concepts, and I'll let you have the last word.
Well, we've talked about the process of crumbling, drying, storing. And like you said, Vermont, that brings stability to a farmer, to the industry that allows processing all year long. And we really believe in that. And I think here it's coming to 2022, and I think we've got about 10 months till we harvest again. We got some time, not a lot of time, but I think we can put the wheels in motion here and start helping folks in 2022. So thanks for the opportunity. We believe in our technology. We believe in what you're trying to do. And I think together there's a marriage that's going to help the industry. Thank you.
And thank both of you guys, and to the Hempcaster and to everybody out there listening to us. Thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to our next Hempcaster, where we talk a little bit more about Aaron and his downdraft drying system. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and we shall talk.
Thank you.